guys, and welcome to the latest episode of What's Next, which is our series for recent graduates. And so this episode, I have very fun, I don't know if funly is, that's not a word. I've been out of school for too long. I have very affectionately titled All About the Benjamins. But also just because it's so important that we have this conversation about money. And so we're getting down to the nitty gritty with money today. So Matthew is not joining us for this episode, but that's okay because we're still representing. We're so happy to be working with Canned Goods Magazine on this. And we're so happy to have a new set of panelists with us today. And so we're all just going to go around and introduce ourselves and just, do what we usually do for this. And, tell us your name, where you went to school, where you're from, where you live, and like what you did, what you studied versus what you do now, if you graduated. And then in true college orientation fashion, you have to give us a fun fact. So I'll start. Again, I'm Mariah. I've done this already, but I'm Mariah. I'm originally from Chicago, but I went to school in Philly. I graduated in 2015. No, I didn't. I graduated in 2019. I started in 2015. And now I live in LA. I studied acting, but now I pretty much just write and direct and do a lot of creative direction. And I am a current editor. I don't know why I said current, as if there was one before me, but I'm the editor-in-chief of Textured Air. And a fun fact about me that's different from the one I gave the last time. Ooh, I didn't think of one. Hold on. Wait, what fun fact about me? Oh my God. I did not learn to ride a bike until I was 12. Okay. I don't know if that's a fun fact, but I think it's very interesting because most people learn to ride a bike when they're like 5. It took a lot longer for me to do that. All right, let's go round robin. Let's just go round robin. So Camille, go ahead.
Great. My name is Camille Young, and I'm from Philadelphia, right outside of Philadelphia, Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. I went to school at Temple University, which is in Philadelphia, and that is where I am living. I'm a working actor / teaching artist, writer, one of the editors for Textured Air. Fun fact, we're on our, 4th episode. I'm like, I don't have any more fun facts. I can yodel. I will not be proving it. I will not be proving it here, but it is a skill that I do have that I can harness when I need it.
Yes. There you go. I should have said I can juggle 2 balls. No.
You actually should not have said that at all. Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Or it needed to be. Trust me. It's a talent. Anyway. Look at Jess's face. Okay, Shelby, go ahead.
I'm Shelby. I'm from Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. I still live in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. I went to Temple University for public relations, graduated this year, May 2020. And a fun fact about myself is I am a Beyonce enthusiast. Like, there's Beyonce fans, and then there's me. I'm in a category by myself.
Yes.
That's about it.
I support it.
Hire her.
Hey, I'm Jess Money. I am from Pennsauken, New Jersey, which is right across the bridge from Philly. I went to school at Temple University, studied musical theater and acting. And I'm also sort of wannabe working actor, teaching artist, somewhere in the middle there.
You're doing it.
We try our best. I finished school in January of 2020.
Yes.
And a fun fact about me is that my first and last shows at Temple University included Mariah Woods. And that was quite the experience. Bookends, we love to see it. And she's maybe the worst scene partner. Don't trust her. Don't trust her because she'll mess you up. But anyway.
All right, Cynthia, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Cynthia. I grew up north of Philadelphia, outside. I went to Temple University as well. I'm trying to think. Fun fact about me: I majored in computer science. I now work at a tech startup. Honestly, I'm obsessed with plants. Like my roommates, I've actually relocated to my parents' house, and my roommate has been like, "You have too many plants. You need to like text me when to water them because I'm gonna forget." I like have to have her send me pictures to be like, "Okay, are they still healthy?" Like I am a plant enthusiast. I don't think I could ever be with somebody that doesn't understand the necessity of indoor plants like I do.
Okay, Terry, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Terriana. I was born and raised in Chicago, like Mariah. We actually went to high school together, and
We went to middle and high school. She's like one of my oldest friends. That's just crazy that we've known each other for that long.
I know, literally. I just graduated actually December 2019 from UIC. I wore my shirt because I felt like it was appropriate. I majored in integrated health and science. I am an EMT, so I currently work as an EMT. However, I'm looking for a new job.
That's okay. We all are.
We do.
I don't know one person who's not.
Right. I still live in Chicago. So.
All right. And give us a fun fact.
A fun fact about me. I'm actually incredibly decisive. I was thinking about this earlier. Remember that time we spent like the whole lunch period of you helping me decide what I wanted to major in college because I kept changing my mind. Like that's the biggest Gemini quality about me. I not pick like one thing. I'm like all the
All right. So we have a very mixed crew today. I'm very excited about this. So like for me, the importance of like this episode being its own episode is just that and we all talked about this when we had started this series, was just about like there aren't enough honest conversations about money going into college because nobody likes to talk about it. It makes you sweat in like weird places because for most people, it's such a source of stress. It's a huge stress factor in most people's lives because most of us live below the poverty line, or like just barely above it. And so we've grown up having this very strained and strenuous relationship to money. So when it comes to paying for education, nobody likes to talk about how we are all here. And so I really wanted to like start this conversation with at home about like how you talk to your parents about money when the time came for you to go into this, because all of us, as we discussed in our meeting to plan this episode, we come from very different backgrounds when it comes to this kind of thing. But the one thing we had in common was just that the conversation that we had to have with our parents about money was a very like stressful one. So I want to, and I'll start with this, and I'll start just to open the conversation, because for me, like with my mom, like being a single mom pretty much her entire life. I mean, like pretty much she's been a single mom her entire life. And so there's always that mystery about how your parents always make it happen, somehow, because you're like, and my mom is queen of quitting a job. That's where I get it from. She don't never stay in a job. She don't too long. And that's where I get it from. She's with quickness, she's out of it. So I always just wondered, like, how do we stay afloat? So when it came time, and I'm looking at all these colleges, and I was looking at these like colleges in New York because I had all those fantasies, and I blame Glee for a lot of it. I was like, I'm going to go to NYU. It's $70,000 a year. And my mom was like, from who? Like we started to figure it out. And so pretty much because she didn't go to college and like my dad didn't finish college. And by this point when I was applying, like he wasn't around anyway. So it was really just her and I, and we didn't have any frame of reference as to how to go about getting government aid, as to how to go about this kind of thing. And so she was like, I'm gonna be honest, I can't pay for it. You're going to have to figure out how to pay for it yourself. And here I am, 18, and I feel like now there's an elephant on my chest, now, because I'm like, so many of my dreams have been shattered because like she just couldn't do it because she has 3 other kids to support. But I think in my case, it really was a very vital conversation that I need to have, because now I'm like, I know where I stand and I know what the gap is that I need to fill in order to be able to afford college at all. Like I had to find the money somewhere, you know, because I couldn't get it from home because she was just like, listen, I can help you out with this and that and this and that. But paying for tuition was just not something that she could do. And so it was very important for me to have that conversation with my mom, not only to just lift some of the mystery, the curtain of mystery that is parenting and how they make it happen. Because I think it's at that point in your life when you start to see your parents as human beings, you know what I mean? And not just as these entities that have raised you and that have all the answers, but you start to see them as people who also need guidance and who also don't know what they're doing all of the time. And so I think that was just like a very vital conversation for me to have.
I was just going to say, like, yeah, it was like I felt like I turned 18 and all of a sudden there was a lot of like super honest conversations happening about like, I don't know. I think I was like, I thought I was just going to like apply to every school and whatever. And I was like, my parents were like, no, like, you know, you should be able to get to do the thing you want, but we're probably gonna have to keep it in state.
Right.
And I was like, okay. Like we were just starting to have a lot of really honest conversations that I wish maybe that I had like started myself. Like right. I was so not, of all the new things that were happening, I was definitely not thinking about taking on this new responsibility. Like the money, I just wasn't thinking about, which was kind of silly on my part, considering that like, we don't like, Shelby can say too, we're sisters, but like, we're not like rich or anything like that. Like, and it's really something I should have been thinking about more. Like I kind of was so used to them kind of pulling through and figuring it out for me. And then it became, this was such a different ball game. Like this was such a different amount of money that was happening. And it was really interesting to see what my parents, I'm their oldest kid. So it was like the first time they were doing this and kind of seeing how a difference, like Shelby's had a different experience with money and my parents, and they kind of knew a little bit more about what to do and like tips and tricks by the time it was time for her to go to school.
But you were like the guinea pig in that situation.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In every situation, in all the situations.
Believe me, I feel you on that level, because that's another thing that happens when you're like the oldest child. Like you're always like a surrogate parent to the younger kids, and so you do know a little bit more.
Well, okay, let me not be out here. Shelby, not while Shelby is staring me right in the face. I am not gonna lie and act like I'm that girl. I'm not that parent girl. And Shelby's like so good at money. And I think it's because she watched me just
be bad at money.
Do a lot. Like just do whatever.
Having an older sibling seeing like what not to do and how you're going to do it different. There will still be mistakes, but you won't make those same mistakes.
No.
And your parents do know more. So like there is more help. And because you might see what they're going through, I think there's more of a push on you to do better and to find more money in the spaces that are willing to give it.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's, I think that's like I like that. Cynthia, you were about to.
Yes.
Well, especially with the older sibling thing, the difference for me in my experience was that my older sibling, because of immigration issues, she wasn't eligible for federal aid. So I was the first one that ever had to, sorry, my sister's walking by.
Is it Marsha? I'm Marsha.
Yeah. She goes. But so yeah, my sister, because of immigration situations, I was the first one that actually qualified for federal aid. So I was the first one to ever fill out FAFSA. And when my little sister went through college, I was the one that my parents would call whenever they had an issue or a question. I was the first one to ever have like federal, like direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So I needed to navigate that whole thing. I was the only one that was eligible for honestly most scholarships, because a lot of scholarships, you're only eligible if you are like a US citizen in that regard. So figuring out money. And the one thing I was really happy about too, especially with talking with my parents, was I did not initiate that conversation. My parents literally sat me down and said, look, because of your sister's like status, we've had to pay out of pocket for the past 3 years. So we have no money. Yes. Your whole entire higher education, you are going to have to fund yourself. And luckily they told me that towards the end of my 11th grade year. So my whole senior year, I had that full time to really sit down and figure out how much college actually costs and like really understand the value of that much money for the first time in my entire life. And then also figure out, okay, where am I going to get this money? Because currently in my bank account, I might have $700.
That's very generous of you. I couldn't imagine. My baby not in 11th grade, but okay.
Well, this was like my long-term savings account that my parents had put away money for. Because a lot of my friends, because I grew up, honestly, my neighborhood was rich. We were not. We lived well below the poverty line. So a lot of my friends were like, oh yeah, like my long-term savings is enough to get me through my first year of college. And I'm like, my long-term savings isn't even enough to buy me all of the textbooks I need for my first semester.
My long-term savings was enough for a plane ticket because I didn't have it. So I wouldn't be able to get to school.
No savings.
But I think that's a good like segue, Cynthia, since you mentioned that, into just like you took that time because your parents told you at the end of your like junior year, knowing that what was about to come up, that you then were going to have to figure it out yourself, which like brings me to like an important point is like then the conversations not only that you have with your parents, but that you have with yourself about money and about like your expectations versus reality when it comes to what you can afford and all of those things. So I want to hear you, like your guys' thoughts on like what that conversation was like to have with yourself about like reality versus, fantasy.
I know for me, at least, I can just start this off because it's very quick and simple. For me, I was like, I know college is not going to be the best 4 years of my life. I know that up front. I know that I'm not going to have enough money to be able to live on campus, live out that college dream. But I also knew like, I don't really want college to be the best 4 years of my life because after college, there are so many other years of your life that I would rather be super enriched and colorful and fun that I was like, I am willing to take this sacrifice of going to a college that's not going to be the first choice. Hopefully I'll have a good time, but I truly have no expectation that like, this is going to be a good time while I'm here. Mm. So having that conversation with me, like with myself, really helped me be like, what am I willing to pay for an experience that I'm honestly not expecting to be the best experience of my life?
Right. That's good.
I had like completely the opposite mindset. I think I just watched too many TV shows. I'm like,
oh, of course, we all did.
I'm gonna go exactly where I wanted to go, like, which obviously didn't end up happening. But for me, honestly, until I actually graduated, I didn't even really think about the money. I was just like, this is what I know I need to do at this time. Luckily, I don't have like a huge ton of debt. Like I know from other classmates that we went to high school with, they had like $100,000 in debt or in student loans. I'm like, that's not going to be me, but like, I'm okay with putting enough money out there for the experience. So, which I could have done better on saving money, definitely. But yeah, I had completely a different mindset.
We all can. Yeah, I think that's important, like to like about just like when you start having those conversations with yourself, because for me, like it wasn't even until like really around the time that I started like auditioning for colleges, around the time that I started like applying, and I'm like, oh wait, there are all these other costs beyond tuition and beyond, room and board. And even that is like crazy. And when you see that sticker price there, you're like, oh shit, like people really pay, like they have all that money. And at this time I still had like Broadway ambitions, I wanted to go to New York and have that whole fantasy. And so I remember thinking like, okay, so I'm going to go to NYU. I didn't get into NYU, but that doesn't matter. And I'm like, okay, but how am I going to afford $70,000? And so I started like having to like be like, okay, Mariah, like you have to be realistic, you have to be realistic about where you can afford to go and what you can make out of that experience of where you do end up. Because I mean, like it really, again, college is what you make it. And so you can't just expect, because even if I had gone, who's to say that it would have been this experience that I would be like remembering all these years later, or that I wouldn't have regretted spending that money. And so what I think is like very important in the conversations that you have with yourself is that you don't want to go somewhere where you're always thinking, I'm spending so much money to be in this place. Is it worth it? You want to make sure that the money that you're spending is like a good enough amount for you to be getting the best amount, like for the sacrifice that you're making, for the contract that you're signing over to the United States government. You want to make sure that it's worth that amount. So for me, like having that conversation with myself about like just like a level of like realism, I had to like bring myself down to earth about like what I could afford, about like what was going to be worth it, what kind of loans was it going to be worth to take out. And when I think about it, I think I ended up in the best place that I could have for the money that I spent, because I didn't spend every day agonizing over the amount that I was paying to go to college. So I think that's something that needs to be taken into account when money becomes a barrier for you, you know, versus like where you think you should be. Because where we think we should be in high school, I wouldn't trust that Mariah with anything.
Yeah.
I would not trust that version of myself with anything. So I think it was good that there was that gut feeling that I had that made me say, you gotta take this into consideration.
And so I'm really curious.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was curious, especially with Jess and Shelby, since you guys are the most recent graduates.
Right.
One, what was that decision like going into college? And two, now that you've recently graduated, do you think it's worth it? Especially too with Shelby, you living through the whole coronavirus Zoom university thing.
So when I got out of like high school, I wasn't really motivated to go to college. It was kind of like a necessary evil. And like I'm a natural born penny pincher. So I did pick the cheapest school I got into, and I couldn't stand it. I hated it. So
I was going to say how that worked out for you.
Yeah. I transferred. It was a more expensive school, but I feel like the education was worth it more than I was getting at the other school. Right. So I did see the benefits, because knowing that I picked a school based on the money didn't really match up to what I knew that my potential was. I picked a school lower than me, and I shouldn't have. So getting out of school, I do see that my degree is like way worth it. Right now it's looking a little itchy because of COVID, but I'm support my decision on leaving and picking like a more expensive school.
Yeah. And that's fair too.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say that first of all, I knew that I wanted to go to school for theater, and I only auditioned for 2 schools.
Yeah.
And only applied for maybe like, I was really acting out because I had nobody. So I have 2 older siblings, but neither of them went to school. And like nobody in my family like does theater. So this was like way brand new. And so I was like, I know that I want to go to Temple because Jordan went to Temple. Jordan's one of my best friends from high school. So I was like, he loves it. It's great. I'm like, that'll be fine because it's not that far from home. Right. And then I auditioned at Rutgers. Don't do that. Anyway. And like at the end of it, I'm kind of like,
she said, don't.
I don't know. I don't know that I would have enjoyed going anywhere else because I didn't go anywhere else.
Right.
Know?
Yeah.
So I feel like it was a fine choice for what I knew at the time.
That's good. I like that. So then I
think, can I say one more thing? Yeah. I think it's important to like think about the city you're going to school into when it comes to money. Right. Like feel like I was already familiar with the city of Philadelphia. I understood how much things were there. I knew what the cost of living was like.
Right.
Like I'm just thinking about you choosing, like wanting to go to a school in New York. Like that's a different set of money challenges, not even just thinking about tuition. New York just happens to be a very expensive city to live in.
And those are the kinds of costs that you never take into account because they're not the kind of costs that are like advertised on the website. So when you think about like college and those kinds of things, you think about tuition, room, board, and then they like factor in books. But nobody actually knows the real cost of books. No. So you have to buy books, and then you realize they lied to you about the cost of books. These other hundreds of dollars that have just been thrown in there, that like, you were like, I wasn't expecting this. And so if you don't save properly, it can really, you can start off in the hole, and if you're in the hole, then you already have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a great tip. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that's probably a good segue into talking about just like paying for things that aren't tuition. Like, what was that like for you guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to say what helped me out a lot freshman year with that is I got a job that summer before college. It was the first job I had ever had. And let me not sit up here and act like I didn't blow through a lot of that money that summer on God knows what. I didn't need anything. I was 18 and I lived at home. I was buying dumb stuff because I had money and wasn't used to it. But like, I think it is such a smart thing to do is to, if you can, get a job that summer and don't touch that money because you're living at home, and when you get to school and you don't want to eat your little meal plan food today, or you want to just like get yourself a treat, or you don't know how much those books are going to be, that extra money that you have just from working that summer really comes in handy.
Really comes in handy, especially when you don't have to be like hidden up your mom and dad and who else ever. Like, listen, I need $10. I know I just called you yesterday for $12, but I need $10 today. I got to go do this. I got to go do that, because there's another thing that happens when you like in whatever major that you have, like there are all these hidden costs that you didn't know you had to pay for. Like there are all these, like there's all with us, those of us who were theater majors, for us it was always like you have to have these shoes and this thing and that thing, and you have to have this, and then you have to pay for makeup yourself, and you have to buy all these like yoga mats, and you have to go see these shows, you have to travel here and there and here, and I'm like, whoa, like I didn't know I was gonna have to pay for all of these things. Like all these costs come out of nowhere, and so if you're not properly prepared for it, if you haven't saved for it, you need to factor in, and this is what's important about like school and the hidden costs that come with it, is that you need to factor in like that something can go wrong. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. If you have this vision of what it's going to be and what it's going to cost, I promise you it's going to cost more than that. And it's just going to hit you out of nowhere. And so I think the best advice that we could give to you as far as like hidden, or that I could give as far as hidden costs and paying is concerned, is just be prepared. Be prepared to spend more money than you're comfortable with spending, because I think in college I started buying things. And so my like barometer for like what was expensive kind of like shifted from what it was in high school. Cause I'm like, this is just what this costs, you know? Yeah. And whereas in high school, if I had bought like a $50 pair of dance shoes, I'd be like, girl, what the fuck? You're not gonna wear these every day, are you? Like, I'm not this shit. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe it's actually worth it to do a roundtable like real quick and all of us name like 1 to 2 unexpected costs that we weren't prepared for, specifically with our majors or even just in general. And also too, if there is a university service that you were able to get like a discount for said thing, or that you wish you would have known so that you could get a discount or like get it for free.
Yes.
Like, I'll start for computer science. I didn't know I needed a laptop. Like my first semester, the night before a lab, my laptop shut down. I think I like hit the motherboard a little too hard with my code or something like that. Like she was done. And then I was like, oh, it's fine. We have a bunch of computers on campus. Those labs closed way too early, and I can't stay on campus every day because I'm a commuter. Right. So I had to buy my own laptop, and then I also had to buy a bunch of software. And another thing too was those classes where you have to like buy the code to access an online learning system. Those were the worst. I absolutely hated those.
I agree.
And those weren't cheap. They were like $100. And the worst was the terms and conditions. They would be like, you can only buy one plan and it's $100 for the year, even though the class is only for 4 months.
Whew. So how did you get around that? Or like, what service then did you use to like offset that?
Honestly, I went to my professor and I was like, I'm paying for school out of my own pocket. I cannot afford this $100 to pay for a year-long subscription, and I'm graduating in 4 months. And my teacher Venmo'd me the money. He was like, don't worry, like I got you. Yeah. So sometimes it's worth it to even just be upfront and tell your professors. Like I had a French teacher and I was like, I can't afford to buy this textbook for the semester. She said, here's my textbook, scan all the pages, upload it to like your personal computer, and then just use that as a textbook for the semester. So it's worth it to talk to your professors too about things if they're out reasonable, because you're probably also not the first one.
Absolutely, you're not. I think for me, I am an advocate for begging. I am an advocate for like being honest and exploiting your trauma and begging for whatever you need to beg for. Because for me, I think a hidden cost was textbooks for me. For me, it was a lot of plays and shit that I did not know. Because the mistake that I made after I got my first syllabus, I went straight to the books. and I bought all the books that they say, because what they'll do for everyone watching at home is the professor will be like, okay, I'm setting aside these books for our class at the bookstore. All you have to do is go to the bookstore and tell them you're in this class, and they'll give you all those books. And it came out to be $200. And so I'm like, okay, I guess I gotta buy this, because this is like, what this costs. But then I didn't realize, because I was so new, but this is this is when making friends, this is when community comes handy, because I didn't know that all the other theater majors were just passing around plays. We just pass around textbooks. Like that's what we ended up doing. It was like, oh, you're taking acting 4, here's my Chekhov book. Don't go buy that shit. Like, oh, you're taking race on the stage, take all these plays. I'm not reading them no more. Or even to be honest with people about, I took this class, I know what's going to happen. You're not going to use that. Don't buy it. You have to wait. Sometimes when you're in a pinch, you got to wait till the last second. Like, I'm sorry, when it comes down to money, sometimes you got to put it off for as long as you can. That's just the reality of it.
Actually, so I was actually a bio major for the first 3 years of college. I stopped buying textbooks with the exception of my English class, because we actually had to like take quotes from the books. Other than that, I never bought a single textbook, because number one, they put all the lectures, like everything's online. Like, chances are they're not going to reference, like they're going to reference the book in class, but they're not going to have anything about it on the exams or in the quizzes, or it's always like, I know it's cheating, but like there's always Quizlet and everything on online. So you really, like, I never had to buy. Yeah, it was really only buying like access codes so I can do my homework.
Right.
I don't ever feel the need to actually buy a textbook. So.
And as you all saw earlier, I think it's very important the way everyone reacted when I said that. It's very important to remember, don't go to the university bookstore. Do not. Yeah. If you can help it. Now, sometimes they will get you with that, like, oh, this is the book for this class and you have to buy it because this is the only book that we offer for this class, and they don't sell it. Don't go to the university bookstore unless you absolutely have to. Don't even go buy pins from the university bookstore. Buy paraphernalia from the university bookstore, because you can buy somewhere else cheaper.
Always.
If you have to buy said book at the bookstore, one thing I found is if you keep it in good enough condition, you can sell it back to them and they'll pay you.
Always,
store, but you can sell it back so it's not collecting dust on your shelf.
Yeah, and buy used if you can.
Always
buy used. Use that person's notes in the margins. See what they're saying.
Yes, everything.
Yeah, and check and see, especially I took a lot of like reading intensive and like history classes, and a lot of the stuff we were assigned, like textbooks, were stories and things that were public domain. Like, check and see if it's public domain, that it's out there for free. You can access it online. Don't buy a Shakespeare play. Don't buy that you can get them all. Don't buy the Epic of Gilgamesh. You can find her online. Like, you don't always need it. Sometimes it's out there for free for you already. And a lot of times they're telling you to buy it because like the money, like sometimes the teacher wrote the book or something like that. So yeah, it's a scam.
Yeah. So, also, even if it's not in the public domain, there are things like JSTOR and all those things that you have access to through your university library, because you are now a university student. And so you can access all of those books either online or through the library. You always need, that's always the first thing that I do when I get a syllabus that has books on it. What is at the library now? And then they also have at universities now, they have Easy Borrow, which is like this system that you can use. So if your school doesn't have that book, they will get it from another school and you can borrow it for the entire semester. So you don't even have to pay for books, because if they don't have it at your school, they have it at another school in New York that they're going to send here, because lots of people are doing that. So the point that we are all trying to make is don't pay for textbooks. But let's get into don't pay for textbooks. But see, I want to segue then into a conversation about the things you do have to pay for, which is tuition and room and board. So I want us to just talk about how we paid for that. I know everybody's like, but I think it's important to be honest about then how you paid for school.
I guess I can start.
Sure.
So, freshman, I lived on campus in the dorms freshman year. My parents paid, well, specifically my dad paid for my dorms, and it was like hella expensive. So after freshman year, he told me like, no, he made me stay at home, and he bought me like a car instead so I can drive to school or whatever. But my family drives me crazy. So I took the initiative to up and leave.
Yes, I know that's right.
I literally left after my sophomore, the first semester of sophomore year. I up and left home. Like I basically ran away from home, and I got a job and I made it work. Like I worked my ass off. And yes, at the end of the day, like I know Mariah, you had several jobs there and going to school. Like I worked like 30 something hours a week and going to school, having like 16, 17 credits.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's important not to stress yourself out too much, but you will make it work if you want it. Like,
oh, absolutely.
You have to prioritize. It's been a whole lot of times where I had to prioritize a lot of my undergraduate career going to work instead of going out drinking or doing whatever the fuck, other people are doing, because I knew like, okay, in order to keep my sanity, I need to be away from home. In order to do that, I have to pay and go to work, and I have to pay for like all these bills and stuff. So I think for me, it was a good trade-off for me, because it, I had to go through it, so.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very important, is like the cost, like what the cost of like freedom, and the cost that you pay to be sane, because living at home is something, and we always think like, oh my God, it's going to save so much money, but it's not the same situation as you were in when you were in high school, because there's so much more freedom in your life now. So the part of what you're paying for when you are paying for school is just the freedom to be away, that's something that was so valuable to me as well. It's just like being out of my home environment. Mm-hmm. And like, but then back to what we were talking about how we pay for school. Like for me, it was a combination of some loans. I didn't have any private loans. I almost had some private loans, but I opted out of that. So I just had federal loans and federal grants. I like maxed out the amount that I could get in federal loans and federal grants. And then I had some like very generous scholarships from Temple, but that only happened. And here is like what's important is because on decision day, I told the story before, it came down to Temple or the University of New Hampshire, and the University of New Hampshire had offered me more money. And so I called Temple up because I did not want to move to New Hampshire, because who wants to live there? I mean, no shade. So then I called up Temple and I was like, so I'm considering going here. Can you match what they gave me? And sometimes you have to call a financial aid office and you have to say, hey, what can you do? And because the worst thing they could say is no. And then the decision is made for you. So then you're like, am I going to go and spend the extra money? Or it never hurts to ask. The answer will always be no if you don't ask for the money, because 9 times out of 10, they have it. You just have to ask for the money. And so I asked Temple for the money and they matched that offer. And then that like kind of set me up to have like a little bit more money than I needed freshman year, which I wasn't prepared for. But then the thing is that never stops, because for me, it was like year by year. I'm like, okay, so I know, and tuition is always going to increase every year. They're always going to raise the price of what it costs to go to school. Just
by 2 to 3%.
That's how they are. But for me, like, it was like always like, okay, it's around that time where you're about to start applying for FAFSA. So you need to also start applying for scholarships. Like the scholarship hunt doesn't stop when you go to college. Like it is constant, because you got to pay for it for the next 3 years and maybe more if you get there. So for me, it was just a combination of always applying for scholarships whenever I was eligible for them, even if they were small. Like $500 is a lot in terms of things. Like for me, that was almost a month of rent. That was a couple months of bills. Like if I had gotten that scholarship. So like that's a lot in that respect. So don't apply. Like there's no scholarship too small, because money is money. And if it's free money, it's free money. Take it. Even if you got to exploit your trauma a little bit. And believe me, I did. I think we can all attest to that.
Yeah. Also, if if you do go to college and you do go to end up getting a job, I won't say a lot of jobs, but there are quite a few jobs that offer to pay like tuition reimbursement. Like the first job I got in college was at Chipotle, and they offered to pay your tuition back, but you had to pay for it first, but they reimburse you after, making sure like you get whatever, like a C or higher or whatever. But if they offer that, definitely look into it, because you could always like recycle that money.
Yeah. So then I want to talk, and I want because I want to hear, because Jess, we were talking about this and we talked about it a lot. So now that we're talking about paying for college, we need to talk about the devil's den. We need to talk about the financial aid office, y'all. The financial aid office and your experience with that place. So why don't you start for us, Jess?
So I just want to say that it's very important to stay hydrated so you can get those tears worked up. A lot of the time you're going in there and nobody's smiling. Nobody has seen the light of day for God knows how long. And they don't want to hear anything you have to say. And you have to go in and you have to know what you're asking for. And you should try to be as proactive as possible. In my case, every single time, because I was doing private loans. My education was fully funded by private loans. Would not recommend. Again, didn't know what I was doing. My mom was making too much money for me to get government aid. So everything was private loans. And every time I had to go in, it was because I had taken out the loan too late, because I was like acting out in the summertime and I needed them to either forgive me for the time that it needed to process or to help speed up the processing time. So my advice here is just to be proactive and to know exactly what it is you need to say and who you need to speak to, because they will give you the runaround.
Mm-hmm.
And also you might have to cry a little bit, because people don't like that, and they will do whatever they need to do to get your crying ass out of their office.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Yeah, I agree with Jess. Like I did not have like, my financial literacy is not great. I didn't know anything about loans or what I didn't even know sometimes like what I was going into. I would be on the phone with my mom like, so what am I trying to do here? I'm here at the office, like you said, what am I asking for? What do I want? And like my parents were paying for my education. They have some loans. I took out some loans. We're paying those loans back. Not really, but they're there. I know that they exist and they keep asking for me. But yeah, I think with financial aid, we've talked about it before, earlier is better. Get in there. Don't start dealing with this. Don't go in talking about this semester. Try and stay ahead of the game if you can. I know I had a situation where I had to take 2 extra classes after I graduated. That costs money too. Yep. I don't know what I thought was going to happen with those credits. I was like, oh, this is a real expensive mistake I made. And then also made a bigger mistake of not telling my parents about it, because I was nervous to tell them until it was like time to register. And I said, not only am I not really graduating on graduation day, but I'm going to need several $100s to take the 2 classes that I need. And it, as you can imagine, did not go over well. So I think there's like about being prepared. I think it's important to note that if you're not a full-time student, some of that money does not go to you. There were semesters where I was like, oh, I'll take less credit so that I can work. And then it was like, okay, well, girl, if you're not going to be a full-time student, then you don't get this money anymore. You have to have a certain amount of credits to do that. So there was just a lot of stuff I just didn't know. I would say start getting familiar with it as soon as you can, if you know what your situation is and know that you're going to be someone who needs that aid. And cry, yes. Cry and beg. I would sit in that chair and I go, so look, I'm very dramatic. I said, I'm poor and I have a dream. I'll sing for you right now if you want to see. My mom's gonna be so mad at me if I don't get this money. I said, I need it. Yeah, closed mouths don't get fed. They really don't. Like, I don't know why I was so reluctant to go to financial aid all the time, and my mom had to keep being like, go.
It's scary to talk to adults about money. We talked about how difficult it was to talk to our parents about money. It is so hard because they look at you. They know that you don't know. And And they're not, nobody really has the language to like get you that caught up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's tough. I'm somebody who has a hard time asking for any kind of help.
Yeah.
So that was a whole new ball game for me.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of expenses that I didn't need to have. Like I lived on campus and I didn't need to. Like I I'm from very, very close to Temple University. But like someone said earlier, like I watched too much TV and I was like, I'm going to be in college. It's going to be the best years of my life. And my mom that dream was like really important to her that I got to do it because she wasn't living on campus and she did school. And so she was like, and we both realized that dream is expensive. We both like had to get real about it. Yeah.
That's a good segue into our next topic, which is the real costs of adulthood. I want to, just by a show of hands, to start this conversation off. How many of you knew how much a rug costs before you got an apartment?
I still don't have a rug because I know how much it costs.
How many of you know how much a microwave costs? Listen, when I got my first apartment, I was like, if we could unplug the refrigerator in this bitch, I would. We don't need electricity. We don't need no extra expensive.
Exactly. You don't need cable.
What for what? What we need cable for?
Yeah, me and Shelby grew up in a TV watching family. And I was like, what am I going to do? Nothing. My life did not change. I didn't even realize I didn't have a TV. Forgot that was something I used to do.
No. Wow. I think it's so important that like you just start to realize like there's so many hidden costs that come with adulthood. You know, that come with like being 21, that come with like the real cost of being on your own and having an apartment. And so like, how did you guys navigate that? Probably not very well, since none of us knew how much a rug costs. So we couldn't know how much electricity costs. And oh my God. In the wintertime, I had 2 blankets. I said, we not turn that heater on for nothing in this bitch. If we gotta sleep together, we gonna sleep together, y'all. We not turning that motherfucker. Okay. I refuse. It's so expensive, and you never realize that. Because in my house, the heat stays on 75. But now whenever I go home, I say, you got your heat on 75? Like, that shit. We don't even turn it on in my house. But I want to hear about you guys who did eventually live on your own. Like Terry, you were just saying like you moved out and you had to like start paying for your own apartment. And Camille, you lived on campus. And I know Jess, like you also, at some point like you live like near campus. So I'm sure we've all had experiences with like living on our own and like what goes through your mind during those times about like about that moment when you're sitting there with those bills going, is it worth it? Like, how do you justify that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Literally every time. First of all, I don't do nearly as enough research as I should because it's always an oh shit experience. It's like, I don't know until it's too late and I have to scramble to go figure out like, how the fuck am I going to get this money together to make it happen? But I mean, luckily, I always have figured it out, but it's definitely, I got a lot of bills. So. But actually, the first apartment I moved into, I had roommates, and it was literally right across the street from school, but it was student housing. So it was expensive. It was $900 a month. But everything was included. They had like the internet. It was literally right across the street from my school, which is good because I don't like waking up early. So that helped me get through a lot of classes. The fact that everything was included and I was, again, working my ass off. You got to pick and choose what's worth it. So
I would recommend not trying to be bougie.
No.
Who needs the Target? Who needs the IKEA? Like you first of all, start with your family who has extra stuff in their house that they don't need, that they're not using, that I can use. Yes. There are like secondhand places. Now, the world post-COVID, we don't know what to expect. So like, don't be out here taking curb furniture like I was, but like, don't expect your first apartment to be like what you see on Instagram, because that's not it, sweetie. It's not. It's not, and it shouldn't be, because like part of the fun is like having a kind of scrappy looking place. You can make things cute and not spend a whole bunch of money on it, as long as you know what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
That's number one. And then number two, know where your food is coming from. There's always the grocery store on campus that has like crazily inflated prices. I care a lot about food and how much I pay for it because I eat a lot. So like, if you can research the other grocery stores that are around and do some price comparisons, like keep your eye out. Don't go get your milk from the CVS on campus. It's going to be a lot more expensive than if you go to the grocery store that's like a couple blocks away from campus. So just keeping an eye out on how much you're spending on necessities.
Right. Or local farmers markets when they come. Right. They're farmers markets. That's where I used to get all my fruit. I used to go to the Italian market in South Philly, and get all my meats from there. And sometimes you can be a little bougie. Like there are some things when it comes to food that I won't negotiate on. Like I love pasta. Right. And I will have my Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. I don't care if it costs $20 a block. That's just me, though. Like, I have to have that cheese. But, like, I agree. Like, I'm on my third apartment, and I just got my first couch. Like, this is my third apartment, and I just bought my first television, and I just bought my first couch. And, like, for me, so when I was, it's so crazy because the first apartment I had a roommate. And I had to pay for it myself. So I was paying with my refund check money. But of course I wasn't budgeting as well as I should have. So I was like a little short toward the end. But it was okay because my landlord was shit. So I was like, he'll get this money when he get it. But you can't do that. But sometimes you can. Sometimes you can. Because sometimes you have to hold down on your landlords because they really be fucking you over. But you that if you don't feel that they have earned all $1,200 of your dollars, you don't pay rent that month, okay? You wait until they have earned your money.
Yeah.
That's a sidebar. The point is that there are just so many hidden costs with living alone. The cost of getting an apartment, first of all, is ridiculous because you have to have a deposit. You have to have first and last month's rent. And you have to pay for a deposit. Yes. You have to pay an application fee. And then when you pay an application fee, then they have to run your credit. And when they run your credit to get an apartment, that counts as a hard inquiry. And any hard inquiries into your credit affects your credit score negatively.
Yeah, it can make your credit score drop by up to 30 points, which is a big thing. So you don't just want to be applying wherever.
No.
That's another thing I was going to bring up too. I had to actually settle for a more expensive apartment, although it was completely furnished. I didn't have to buy a bed or a couch or anything. I had to settle for the more expensive apartment because they allowed me to co-sign myself because I was a student. My dad doesn't have good credit, and I did not have really credit at all. That was the only thing that would pay me. I didn't have I had nothing. I didn't have any savings. I didn't have none of that stuff. Nope. So you really have to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I lived in 3 different apartments while I was in school. And I know I feel like Temple's kind of an abnormal situation where because there's not a lot of dorm space, people end up living off campus sophomore year, which is a little earlier than most places. And so my parents were like, wait, what? What do you mean you're living in an apartment? And I was like, no, you don't understand. Nobody's going to be in a dorm anymore. I'll just be living with friends. And again, I could have always lived at home, like my very smart sister who's here. But the first apartment I lived in was the first one we saw. Don't do that. There's always a cheaper option. I will say that it was fully furnished, and I think that is a great hack for someone if you're really young, because we were talking about before, furniture is one of those things that you really don't know how much it costs. I don't know. I was like, it can't be that much. Everybody has a couch. No, not at all. Everyone has a couch that they keep for many years because it's expensive to go out and buy a couch. So having it furnished definitely helped. And because of the fact that my parents were mentally preparing to be paying for room and board, through my tuition for 3 years, we were able to come to an agreement where they were paying a portion of my rent and I was responsible for the other portion. Yeah. But you guys are right. That first, last, and security, that was always the biggest hurdle. It was That's a lot of money to be asking from a teenager. And you have to get, like, I know we had to get co-signers.
Oh yeah, me
on
too.
our leases, and right, get my parents, beg them to co-sign, and then make sure but then I need to make sure that I'm on my P's and Q's, because if I'm late on the rent, then that's affecting them because they've co-signed this lease.
Exactly.
So yeah, you just got to be prepared for the responsibilities you're about to take on, because rent is something else. It's something else.
You know what?
College landlords will try and get one over on college students.
Really?
College landlords I found are not as effective as like an adult landlord, because they know that you don't know anything, and they will take advantage. And like Mariah said, do not pay them if they're not doing the things that they say they're supposed to do. I've had apartments with mold. I've had all types of things, and because I was 19. They thought that they could get away with not fixing that and still get their money every month, and that's not cool.
But you guys keep saying the word cosigner. What exactly is the definition of cosigner, just for those watching that are about to enter college and haven't even thought about any of this?
Yeah. And we can segue into this conversation too, since you brought it up. For those of you who don't know, in order to rent an apartment, you have to be like a viable candidate for it. And in order to be a viable candidate for it, you have to have not just good credit, but a long credit history. Mm-hmm. If you have 1 year of credit and it's 700, that matters to no one, because you don't have anything on that credit history except a student loan. So it still doesn't count. So oftentimes what people have to do, who either have bad credit or who have, a short credit history, which is, I think, less than 5 years, Cynthia? So if you have a credit history that's like less than 5 years, you have to have someone who has good credit and a long credit history to say, hey, this person can live here, and if they mess up, it's also on me. So I, with good credit, am saying I trust this person to live here, so I will co-sign this lease with this person so they can live in this apartment. And what happens is, if, like Camille said, if you're not on your P's and Q's and you make a mistake, that falls on them too. So if you somehow end up like not paying your rent, they have to pay it. If you somehow are just not paying your rent consistently and it starts affecting your credit score, it affects your cosigner's credit score as well. So you have to always, and that's the thing about credit, because here I am vehemently against credit cards. However, you gotta get one. Unfortunately, you gotta get one. So I think that's a good segue into the conversation about budgeting and credit cards and savings accounts. Whew. And I would like for someone else. Shelby, why don't you? Because Camille keeps talking about how good you are, with money. Please school us, please.
So most of my college career, I worked and went to college. I actually went to work more than I went to school. I went to school Tuesday and Thursdays, and the rest of the days I would work. So to me, it was budgeting. I always budget, and I budget down to the penny. There's no wiggle room. And I know when I'm getting a check, I'm taking money out, putting it aside just in case. When you have extra money, something always pops up. You drop your phone in the toilet, your laptop dies, just to always have that cushion to know that you're secure. Because I need security to function. I need to know whether whatever happens this week, I'm going to be good and the people around me are going to be good. Whether it's Camille or my parents, I just need to make sure that I'm good. So that's I just get joy in it. So I knew I was I'm going to work. So I'm going to save my money for whatever. Beyonce could be going on tour. That's what's going to make me happy.
Beyonce fun.
Exactly. So I found joy in saving my money. So that was something I always was going to set out. If I'm coming home from cheap college, going to a more expensive college, I knew that I had to do my part because that's a decision I made. So I'm going to work my ass off to make everything that I want happen.
Mm. And with your budgets, did you do, because I know some people do a cash system whenever they get a paycheck. Some people have separate bank accounts. What's the system that you found worked best for you in terms of?
So I have 3 bank accounts. So I'll have checking, savings, and then the growth. Yeah. So my credit card bills will come out of my growth, and that money will always be there for my credit cards, just if I go over or use too much of it. Mm-hmm. And then my reserve, it will be anything that I'm trying to bulk up and plan for, if I want to buy a car, or if I want to go to a concert. So anything that I want will come out of my growth. And then my checking is just like transportation to get to and from school or anything that like I need, my needs. So I'm budgeting my needs, but putting away my wants and like my bills.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll just leave, like, anytime I think I'm going to swipe my card, like that will be a checking move. Or if I know I'm going to buy something I want before I purchase it, I'm moving that money from my reserve to like my checking account. So it doesn't mess up the funds that I need to live my life.
Right.
Yeah.
I think for
That's
me,
actually
helpful. I'm sorry. Well, I'll just like real quick. I wanted to like go off of that since she's talking about like checkings and savings and growth accounts, because for me, I think it was always really helpful. Like, that's what I used my credit card for at the beginning, was just like, if I wanted to do this and I know I'm gonna have the money coming in on this day, I would use my credit card and then I would put it back. I strongly advise, if it's possible, pay off your credit card bill in full every month, because the two biggest factors that go into a credit score, all of the rest of it, there are 5 major factors, but the other 3 don't matter as much as repayment history. If you are paying it back on time, every time, that's number 1. And then 2, which also I think they're both like on equal footing, is that credit utilization rate. So they give you a line of credit that, say, sometimes it's $500 when you're like 18. Sometimes it's like a couple thousand when you get a little older. You're never supposed to use more than 30%. I don't care. Some people say 50, but no, it's 30. You're never supposed to use more than 30% of that, because then it starts to negatively affect your credit score when you go over that 30% of that credit utilization rate. So what for me also helped was, besides repaying that in full, I also got, in addition to my regular checking and savings account, I got a high yield savings account. So what a high yield savings account is, and some of them are a little bit more difficult to get, but the one that I have through Salem 5 Direct Bank, you don't have to have like a minimum amount to put into it. But for some high yield savings accounts, you have to have like a minimum of $5,000 to open the account. But what that means when I say high yield savings account, I mean it earns interest. So your money is in there. And for me, mine earns 2.51 APR. So that's like how much interest the money earns per year. And that's really incredibly high for a savings account that doesn't have a minimum threshold of, I think I had to like do like have like $100 put in there the first time, but it doesn't matter month to month what's in there. But I strongly advise for people who are looking into long-term savings accounts to get a high yield savings account, because then your money earns money. And I know 2.51% doesn't seem like a lot, but when it's just sitting in your checking account, it's not earning anything. So it's more than nothing.
I was just going to say, on the subject of credit, to get a starter card if you are not someone who's good with money. Like, I knew the idea of a credit card freaks me out so bad, because I know how I am. And I just like I want to do what I want to do. And I always, back then I was like, I'm just doing whatever I need to do to make it happen. Like, I don't know, like I shouldn't be stopped. Like, I shouldn't not be able to do stuff because I can't afford it, which is like, girl, what? Like, I was very much that girl who's like, when my account was empty, I was like, great, now it's time to use my credit card, which is like, no, that is not what you do. But I got a starter card, and starter cards have a very low limit, a very manageable limit, so that you can really practice like saving that money and not using it too much. It's kind of like walks you through. It's not a card with a name. It's typically not a card with a name you recognize. My card was from Merrick Bank, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's in a town somewhere not here. But they deal in amounts that make sense for me. So it was a great card to like start off with. Especially because, I will be honest, I maxed it out. So it was a really good card to start with and learn a lesson from, and like make a mistake that was easier to fix than if I had, maxed out like my Discover card that had a huge limit.
Listen, I did max out my Discover card, but here's the problem. Let me tell you the problem of repaying, of never once making a late payment, is they reward you with raising your credit limit.
Yes, but then that also helps with your credit utilization of staying under that 30% rate.
That 30%.
It's literally like a double-edged sword. It's so bad because what happened with me in college is when I was 18, I literally came home from school one day. I'm skipping. I'm having a great day. I think I just found out I got an A on a test. I walk through the door and my dad says, "Sit down right now. We're getting you a credit card." And I was like, "Oh, you co-signing?" He said, "Are you crazy?"
Yeah.
I'm going
No one
into
was
the
getting a credit card for me. They knew better.
Yeah, but my dad was like, "I need you to get a credit card right now to start your credit history because it does take a while to hit that 5 years."
It does.
So honestly, because I got it at the beginning of college, I'm like past that. And like, I'm actually very good at credit cards. And I've learned that what works best for me in terms of budgeting is I budget exactly all of my necessities, especially now, like I have to pay rent. But at the time it was like, what do I need this month in terms of food? Do I have to pay for gas? How much is gas for my car? To get to school, I took the train. Okay, how much is that like monthly trail pass? Am I going to pay by credit card or am I going to pay by cash? So I would figure out what was there. And then eventually just my card kept like increasing my credit limit, that getting to that 30% utilization rate was actually like kind of hard for me to do. And I would only pay for the things that were monthly occurrences like food and transportation and gas and potentially car insurance and things like that. And then every time I got a paycheck, I would put that money into a separate short-term savings account, kind of like what Shelby was doing with her budgeting. And then at the end of the month, when either of my credit cards said, "Hey, your statement is due," I'm like, I already have the money. I would pay like a day or two after I got my credit card statement. And because of that, I literally would just sit back and my cards would just keep increasing my credit limits by the thousands, like every probably 6 months. And I never had to ask. And it was great. And it increased my credit score, but getting there,
they don't ask you to raise the credit limit. They're just like, "Hey girl, here's an additional $1,500 just because
exactly. And then the trick is you need to learn how to not spend more money every month. You need to figure out what you can actually afford, and you have to be realistic about your expenses. But credit cards can also help you in terms of like, if you are really in a pinch and you need money fast, like there have been many times I've been out, with my friends and suddenly I'm like, "Ooh, I got to pay for this Lyft," or "Ooh, I got to pay for this Uber." What I did is I put my credit cards with those accounts. That way I was never caught with Lyft being like, "Well, you have no money in your checking account." Because there were plenty of times that my mom would come to me and be like, "Why do you have $2 in your checking account?"
Girl, let me tell you, that's a good segue into our next topic, which is, the downside of turning 21, guys. Guys, how much does a Long Island iced tea cost? I'll tell you, $20 plus the tip. They're so good, but damn, they're expensive. Oh, no one tells you about the downside of being able to go to the club. And when you're in college, and for those of us who don't, and Jess, you can absolutely speak to this because, you're not in that, club of, people who drink or things like that. But for those of us who do, and then for those of us who then moved to a place where weed is legal, and now you can just go to the dispensary whenever you want and buy it. There's this whole other added expense that you did not ever consider when going out. So then I want to know from you guys then, how did you manage turning 21 and like not getting FOMO, or like how did you manage like not having that club culture take over your life once you had that responsibility? Because there's always that wait. It's like after you turn 18, there are no major birthdays except that one, so you're waiting until that point. And if you were like me, I was one of the last friends to turn 21. So when time came to hit the club, we was like, let's go. You know what I mean? So I just want to hear from all of you guys about
that. For me, work. I worked too much to go out. It literally wasn't until my senior year that I really started going out. And at that point, I was making like more than enough. Like I didn't have to really penny pinch like a whole lot because I was, making enough money. But honestly, had I turned 20, like if I didn't have the job or whatever, I would have been at my parents' house. I would have moved back home. I would have had to move back home because there would have been those, like, I drink too much because there's too much stress. I always have wine in my apartment. It's like, it's just,
Yeah, as a girl who likes to party and play, no, I will say that it's just expensive. It's really expensive. It's much more expensive than you think. I really had no idea that first weekend is fun when everyone's paying for you because it's your birthday.
Your birthday.
But that weekend ends and then it's like, oh snap. My biggest thing would be like really assess and pay attention when you're out to if you like going out because it is an expensive experience. And I have learned over the years, I just turned 25 yesterday. I can drink at home. I like being at home. Sometimes it doesn't feel worth it for me to like pay all that money to be in traffic in a Lyft in Center City, Philadelphia, and go to a place that I don't like and like spend my night like pushing through people that I don't like and just not having an experience that I don't like for a lot of money. So drink at home if you can. The best part about being 21, I think, is not even the going out. I think it's being able to like go to Wine and Spirits after work and pick up a bottle of wine and come home and drink it. So just don't get caught up. You haven't gone out this whole time. It's not going to kill you to sit it out this weekend if the money's not there. It's never worth it to like scrape together or like go hungry because you're trying to like go out here and have fun.
Because then you don't, again, without, like we were talking about earlier, you don't want to be without a cushion. Because when you go out and get drunk, if you're like me, you're just like, yeah, we going here, we getting that. You get and I'm like, tequila shots, okay? And this is where the art, and this is a side note for anyone watching, this is where the art of finessing comes in. You have to get really good at getting people to buy drinks for you. I was really good at getting people to buy drinks for me and all of my friends. If there's one thing about club culture that I think you need to learn how to do, it is finesse, because it's going to be necessary because it's so expensive. You have to pay. One, I always suggest pre-gaming, because if you show up drunk enough, you're going to be so fucked up, you're not going to want to go and just be spinning because you're not going to want to stop dancing, because that's how I used to do it. You have to pay for the Uber to get there. Then you have to stand in line. Then you have to pay to get in the club. You have to pay for drinks and you have to tip. And as a person who was a server, I highly judge you if you don't tip. I always judge people who don't tip, like for real, for real. So then you have to pay for drinks all night and you have to tip every time if you're not keeping the card open. Then you have to pay to go get drunk food. Then you have to pay to get home. You have to wake up the next day and see all the money that you spent, which is always much more than you thought you were going to spend. So it's very important to budget for that kind of thing. When you go out, you're like, I know how much this drink costs. You can't always be buying margaritas. Sometimes you just have to, I'm a tequila Sprite girl, and I don't want no top shelf shit. I want the house tequila. House spirits, ladies and gentlemen. You are not wealthy. I would not advocate for drinking beer because I'm Black, and I would never push that on you. But
okay.
You do what you got to do. But the point is like, it's so important to not get caught up in that whole culture because it is fun. Like, I'm not going to lie. The expense is worth it sometimes because it's fun. I love dancing. I love being with my friends. I love being drunk sometimes. So I'm not going to say it's not a good time, but it's important.
It's a luxury.
It's a luxury, and you have to remember that.
Yeah.
And not all of
I forgot that a lot.
Yeah. And also too, because it's the money episode, I was just going to say, I feel like it'd also be really helpful if we did a round table and we each went around and say, on average, how much we would spend on a night out. I will go first. Between transportation, being there, paying to get in, and the drunk food aspect of it, usually $50 out the window immediately. By the end of the night.
I think that's my base. But I could spend less if I'm looking real good, though.
I have made a low amount of money really stretch me the whole night. But let me just say that on those nights, it's not fun. Like it's a constant anxiety of like, and feeling silly. It's like, wow, I feel mad dumb that I'm out here and I don't have money and I'm stressed out and I'm worrying about whether or not, like, do I have enough money to get home? This is all about, I think it's a safety issue as well.
Absolutely.
You don't want to put yourself in a position when you're out at night, you might be drunk, you don't have a way to get home,
Right.
you don't know what you're like. It becomes a safety thing, and it really puts an added level of anxiety onto a thing that's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
It should be fun. You shouldn't be like pulling from other parts of your life to like have this one night of fun.
That's so important. That really is very important. Yeah. So for me, I think $50 is like, when I go out, I know minimum that's what I'm spending.
Yeah.
Just because I just think that's like baseline.
Okay. For me, I'd probably go a little more than that, just because I did live in the Loop. So a lot of times my Ubers just on the way there was like $14.
Right.
And then once I'm drunk, I'm always hungry. So we always go out to eat after or something like that. Like I did make sure like I pregame before, but also I wouldn't really go out towards the end of the month. I would always go out like when I first got paid towards the beginning, like after I'd already paid my bills, or like towards the middle. But after, the 16th, the 17th of the month, I'm not really going out no more. I'm saving my money after that.
Watching she says the Loop, she means downtown Chicago, which is very expensive and not very walkable.
It's very walkable.
But not the clubs, though.
Oh, no.
Not the clubs. Like, it's very walkable to get around, but not when you're going to the club. You got to take Ubers everywhere down there.
Yeah. Is there like what's the public transportation like?
Oh, the public transportation in Chicago is like the best. Like
that's what I thought. Okay, cool.
Anywhere on the bus or the train. The only problem is I don't want to be on the red line, but, looking this or being that drunk, knowing I'm going home alone. Because with the situation, another thing is like the situation where you live also depends on it. Because sometimes you got to take an Uber yourself because everybody's like, I live over here, you live over there. And so it would always end up being, okay, I got to go home by myself because I'm not going to walk so-and-so's apartment just because they're taking an Uber. So that's another cost because sometimes you split Ubers with friends, but you can't always do that.
Yeah.
What about shopping?
I'm sorry.
I'm actually a part of the same club as Jess. I don't drink at all. So like, I'm saving my money.
I need to get on that train.
Yeah. And like, as somebody who doesn't partake, I don't know, it kind of gave me joy to know that like I could check in and make sure everybody got home safe and stuff like that. And I never really felt like I was missing out.
Did you ever feel pressured to drink when you went out? Because I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there that probably also.
Yeah, I mean, it has to, for me, it came down to just like, I just am not interested because of like family history. And it really like the smell of alcohol actually physically makes me uncomfortable. And I don't like being around drunk people. And so like, just none of that appealed to me at all. And so I never felt like I was missing out. If you are somebody who is like just trying their best because they want to try their best and like doesn't have like a super concrete reason not to, don't let people fuck around with you. People would come up to me at parties and be like, you want this? I'm like, no thanks. They're like, oh my God, that's so cute. And I'm like, go do what you were doing and mind your own business. And I will be minding my own business over here. So just don't let people say weird shit to you. You can make your own choice about whatever you want to make your own choice about.
I think then, because I want to, talk about, since we've talked so much about the stress of money, guys. And I know like for all of us, like it's been such a source of stress, but I would like us for all just to go around because I think I am a huge fan of treat yourself, because like, just because you are poor doesn't mean that you don't deserve to have a good time. It doesn't mean that you don't deserve, fun. And I think that's one of the things that people often shame poor people for is having fun. So I just want to hear about like, what are your non-negotiable luxuries in your life? I want for us all to go around and like say one of them. For me, it is always waxing. I am a very hairy person. And if I am not waxed, I do not feel good. So I always, always, always will. The one thing I will never go with, the two things I think I will never go without, no matter how much they cost, will always buy lip gloss that's very expensive. And I will always get waxed. I don't care how dire my financial situation is. I'm going to find the money.
Well, for me, mine was getting my nails done, especially because after I worked at Chipotle, because I was never able to like have my nails done when I worked at Chipotle. So after that, I'm like, well, I'm still working my ass off. That's like my time for me to sit and have someone else do something for me. So I don't have to, I don't have to worry about going to do something. Like that's my hour or whatever to like chill out. It ain't even really a whole bunch about like, I like having my nails done, but it's the concept of, being able to take a step back and not have to think about, anything or have to do anything. So that's definitely one of my negotiables.
Yeah. Mine was concert tickets. I was like, listen, Beyonce, One Direction, even like I was that person where my friends would be like, are you coming to this concert with me? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna pay you back next month, but buy the ticket for me. Like I will find a way, because it's one of those things like, whereas you like when you go to get your nails done, it's the one time where like you don't need to sit and think. Concerts, it's like I'm just standing there.
Yeah.
And I'm having a great time. And I can forget all of my financial situation that I've been going through for the past God knows how many weeks.
For me, I'm always gonna have my hair done. I don't care, like, but I gotta be happy, and I'm always gonna have a new pair of shoes.
There you go. I support that fully.
I'm really thinking. I really, up until recently, very broke all the time. I'm like I'm not even gonna lie. Like I was very much that paycheck to paycheck girl. I was very much like, like mom, mostly Shelby. I was very much like, no shame in my game. I was very much like a grown woman being like, 17-year-old sister, can you send me some money so I can go eat? I will say it's hard for me to like, I do love if I fall in love with a pair of earrings, it's happening. I will say that. I do have a hard time like finding a piece of jewelry that I like and not just getting it.
Yeah.
And with clothes too, I guess I always say that clothes are an investment. I am really trying to like do not participate with fast fashion too much, because after a few years of only like doing that, I was working for a company, we'll call them Suburban Outfitters, but I was working for them and the discount was great. And so I was buying their clothes and they were falling apart all the time. So I will say like a well-made piece of clothing, I always find to be really rewarding because it'll last longer.
Yeah. And it feels good when it lasts too.
Yes, I love a heavy dress. Yes.
For me, I think it's a combination of like buying a nail, like going and picking out a nail polish, or going to get my nails done, depending on exactly how much I'm willing to treat myself. Because I do like to take the time and do like the whole self-care, like relax spa situation and like do my own nails, but I also do like to get my nails done.
Yeah. That's good. That's really important. I think like we all need to remember just the importance of treating yourself sometimes, no matter, because money is always such a huge source of anxiety. Because like I said, most people live paycheck to paycheck. That's just the reality of like the country, of the world that we live in, of that being. So I think it's been like really like such a good conversation with all of us. Like you guys have been so honest. I do appreciate that. Just like about how we've all struggled with like getting to a place, and some of us are still struggling, get to a place where we like can have things under control. So I do just want to end this with like us all just going around and like saying one major money mistake that you would want someone watching this to avoid. And then 2, with all of the stress of money, how did you make it out of this alive? How did you make it out of college and not let that stress like be the end of your college career?
Well, for me, one big money mistake I went through, they now have these like money advancement apps. And I got stuck into like this loop of always borrowing. Like I'll borrow $100 or whatever from that because they let you take it out in advance. And then when you get paid, they'll take it out of your check or whatever. And I got into that loop of always being underneath because I was spending too much. And I'm like, oh, I can spend more because I can take it out, like take the $100 out. So that's something I would advise not to do like on a consistent basis. Like definitely make sure you catch yourself. How did I make it through? A strong support system. Yeah. I'm literally so blessed with such an amazing family. And although, I haven't a lot of what I know about money now, I didn't come from them. They were still very much supportive on my journey. Yeah. So yeah, I got through because of my family, really.
Yeah, I guess for me, I didn't actually do it, but I was about to. I was going to take out a personal loan. I currently don't have any personal loans. I was going to take out a personal loan for my final semester of college because I truly was like, I do not have any idea how I'm going to get these $1,500 that I need to pay out of my own pocket within the next 3 weeks. And what got me out of it was luckily my teacher recommended me for a scholarship that I got that was actually $1,500. But also I came to the realization that I didn't want to take out a personal loan before the scholarship happened because I read the terms and agreements of my federal loans and also just kind of like read facts about the terms and agreements of personal loans. And I was like, this is actually terrible and is going to keep me locked into a loan with outrageous interest rates, and they're going to find a way to keep me locked in for 10 years so I pay thousands more than I actually took out. So luckily I was able to get a scholarship, but I also came to the term of like, I'm not going to take out a personal loan. So I know I would have figured something out of like, at least knowing my parents would maybe be able to like loan me that money themselves. So I wouldn't be locked into that crazy like terms and agreement.
For me, one major money mistake that everyone should avoid is counting money before you have it and depending on money before it's in your pocket. So like if you think you got a check coming, live your life if like you don't have it yet. If it's not in your pocket, don't count on it. Yep. And how I make it out alive is
just felt that so strongly. I'm sorry.
I felt that in my chest. Ooh.
Oh my God.
Getting some horror flashbacks with that one.
And how I make it out alive, depending solely on myself. Even though my parents might at tuition time say, here's like $1,000 will help you out. But knowing that without them, I'm still going to have it. Like whatever I have to do, if I have to go find a scholarship, putting that responsibility solely on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
I would say one major money mistake, just like not taking responsibility for your own money. That's just something I don't know. Thinking back, I really don't know where I thought it was all going to come from. But I think it's just important to really, even if like your parents are not making you a part of this conversation, to really be like, I need to know what this is looking like, because as soon as you graduate, all of a sudden it's all on you. So I would just say like, paying attention, not avoiding the subject of money just because it's stressful or makes you feel bad, not waiting to the last minute. And yeah, I would just have to say I also had a really strong support system. I had a mom who like was making miracles happen, and I know it was like borrowing, and we have an aunt who works at PNC who I was always able to be like, I'm overdrafted again, like can you do bank stuff? And she would be like, okay. And like, I mean, Shelby's right here. Like when Shelby came to Temple and would like be on campus and could buy me lunch during the day, like I know like sometimes it was definitely like she would never, like she wasn't framing it like that, like she was just coming over to hang out, but like she'd be like, I'm getting food, do you want something? Because she knew. So like just having that support system, that's why I asked her to come here today. She knows way more about money than I ever will. So yeah,
that's very important.
For me, one major money mistake that I didn't apply for scholarships, like pretty much at all. And
stressful though.
So yeah, it's stressful. That's another paper you got to write. That's another can of trauma you have to open, as Mariah mentioned before. So definitely seek those out and talk to people who know about those things. And then again, not gonna lie, I made it out by crying at the fucking financial aid office. Okay. Because those people, yeah, you know, I was always going in last minute and they caught me when I fell. Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes you need that though. It really is very important though. Just being honest. Like I said, don't be above begging because you ain't got it to be above begging. Okay. Just be honest about that. So for me, I think one major money mistake that I wish I had avoided, I wish I hadn't spent those refund checks on cheap Forever 21 clothes that I can't fit and no longer have. I wish I hadn't been just going to Chick-fil-A. I wish I had saved those refund checks for times when I really needed them, when I was really hungry and when I was really growing out of things. And when I really just like, I wish I had been better earlier. And I think it's like one thing I do want to say to people is like myself, I think I've had to unlearn all of that, like beating myself up about something I never had the frame of knowledge to know, because I didn't come from a family that was very financially literate. So I did have to learn all of that on the fly, I will say. So I am patient with myself in that respect. But I do think I took that and then I ran with it. And I was like, well, I mean, I guess, let me just go and do this. So And I'm not gonna lie, I still do that a little bit. I'm better about it now, but it's taken a long road to get there and it's not linear. So I think for me, the way that I made it out alive and that I didn't let it cripple me, again, like all of us have said, I've had a very strong support system. Like I never felt like if I was in a spot that there wasn't someone I could go to who would be like, I got you. So I feel, because I know for a lot of people that's not the case, but for me, I never take that for granted that I even still have that support system even now. But also more than that, as a person who really rarely ever sacrifices the luxuries that she wants, I am a big believer in faith. I say, I don't know where this $7,000 is going to come from, but I know God is going to place it in my lap. Every time he did, I don't know where it's going to come from, but I know I'm going to get it. So I'm going to let you handle the rest. You got to leave it up to a higher power sometimes, people. And every time, I swear to God, it never not worked out for me.
It always came through. It somehow always came through.
And I'm not saying that is a way that you should live your life. But if you want to know how Mariah gets by, it's on your face. I got your face, y'all. Okay. Someone's always there to catch me when I overspend. So, wow, this was a really good conversation. So I really do want to thank you all so much again for doing this. And again, you can find this on our YouTube page at Textured Air. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Textured Air. I guess that's it. All right. So I'm going to stop recording now. But thank you so much for this. How do I stop the video? How do I stop recording? Oh, with the stop.